Imagine a secret Soviet lab hidden deep in Siberia, guarded by armed soldiers. Behind those walls, scientists pushed beyond ethical limits, driven by political obsession and Cold War paranoia. They tampered with nature, attempted mind control, and even tried to create new forms of life. These weren't just strange experiments, they were terrifying and disastrous. Today, you'll discover the Soviet Union's darkest scientific secrets, experiments that spiraled horribly out of control. Welcome to 11 secret Soviet experiments that went horribly wrong. Experiment 1. Ape-human super soldiers. In the mid-1920s, Joseph Stalin had a vision, not of industrial prosperity or agricultural abundance, but of something far darker and stranger. He imagined an army of super soldiers, tireless warriors with immense strength, resistant to pain and hardship. Stalin wanted troops capable of defeating any enemy, no matter how overwhelming the odds. But ordinary humans weren't enough. No amount of rigorous training or ideological indoctrination could achieve his dream of invincible soldiers. Therefore, Stalin turned to a bizarre and disturbing solution, creating a hybrid between humans and apes. In 1926, the Soviet regime recruited a respected biologist named Ilya Ivanov. Ivanov wasn't an eccentric pseudoscientist. He was renowned, respected internationally, and had previously succeeded in hybridizing animals, such as crossing zebras and donkeys. Stalin saw his expertise as a golden opportunity. Armed with ample funding, Ivanov traveled secretly to West Africa, obtaining chimpanzees and conducting experiments that remain controversial to this day. At his hidden lab, Ivanov artificially inseminated female apes with human genetic material. His records describe these chilling experiments with clinical detachment, devoid of emotion or ethical concerns. When initial attempts failed, Ivanov planned an even darker experiment, artificially inseminating human women with ape genetic material. He secured approval from Soviet authorities, who were disturbingly enthusiastic about these tests. Thankfully, public and scientific resistance grew as word leaked, and Ivanov faced increasing obstacles. By 1929, the scientific community, both in the Soviet Union and internationally, expressed outrage at Ivanov's project. Soviet leadership, fearing international embarrassment, distanced themselves from the disturbing experiments. Ivanov was arrested, officially charged with unrelated counter-revolutionary activities, and imprisoned. He died shortly afterward, alone and disgraced, with his bizarre vision abandoned, at least officially. But the idea of ape-human super soldiers haunted the Soviet imagination. For decades afterward, rumors persisted that similar experiments continued secretly in hidden labs across the Soviet Empire. Whether true or not, the very idea demonstrated just how far the Soviet regime was willing to go. This bizarre and frightening project marked the beginning of an era where nothing, not even humanity itself, was off limits. It was a stark demonstration of the Soviet Union's willingness to abandon all morality in pursuit of power and dominance. And this was just the beginning. Experiment number 2, the Kola super deep borehole. In the icy northern wilderness of the Soviet Union, near the remote Kola Peninsula, stood a massive drilling rig. It wasn't searching for oil or minerals. It aimed at something far more ambitious and unsettling. Soviet scientists wanted to drill deeper into the Earth's crust than anyone had ever attempted before. Their mission? Reach depths previously considered impossible and uncover what lay hidden beneath our planet's surface. This was the Kola Super Deep Borehole Project, an ambitious undertaking that began in 1970. At first, the drilling went smoothly. Soviet engineers proudly showcased their progress, breaking world records year after year. International observers watched in awe and envy, marveling at Soviet determination and technical skill. But things quickly took a disturbing turn. As the drill pierced deeper, strange phenomena emerged. Scientists encountered rock formations hotter and denser than they'd ever imagined. By the time they reached nearly 12 kilometers, over 7 miles deep, temperatures surged far beyond expectations. Approaching 180 degrees Celsius, 356 degrees Fahrenheit. Equipment regularly malfunctioned, metal components melted, and electronics went haywire under the extreme conditions. The drilling became a battle against the Earth itself. Then came the stories, the rumours that transformed the Kola borehole from a scientific endeavour into the stuff of nightmares. Workers at the site began reporting strange sounds echoing from deep within the hole. Some described it as unsettling metallic vibrations. Others claimed they heard human-like screams, distorted and echoing, as if emanating from somewhere deep inside the planet. It wasn't long before the locals whispered that the Soviets had drilled straight into hell itself. Officially, the Soviet authorities dismissed these claims, labeling them superstitious nonsense. But secrecy quickly enveloped the project. The government abruptly halted further drilling, sealed the borehole entrance, and barred access to curious outsiders. The truth was simpler, but just as unnerving. Soviet scientists had underestimated Earth's complexities. The intense heat and pressure destroyed equipment faster than engineers could replace it. The once celebrated drilling site became a silent, abandoned monument to scientific ambition gone terribly wrong. Today, the Kola superdeep borehole remains sealed, a grim reminder of humanity's obsession with pushing boundaries, sometimes to the brink of disaster. The borehole itself still exists, a concrete capped portal hiding secrets that some believe were never meant to be uncovered. But this was only one of many Soviet scientific experiments that ventured too far. The next experiments you'll hear about were even stranger and darker. Experiment number 3, two-headed dogs. In secret Soviet laboratories, a surgeon named Vladimir Demikov performed experiments straight out of a nightmare. Starting in the 1950s, Demikov surgically attached the heads and front legs of puppies onto adult dogs, creating living two-headed animals. Shockingly, these unnatural creatures were initially responsive. They drank water, reacted to sounds, and even barked independently, but their survival was short-lived. Within days, the bodies violently rejected the transplants, and the animals died painful deaths. Eventually, Soviet authorities quietly ended these experiments, leaving behind disturbing footage and unanswered questions. Experiment number 4. Psychic spies. At the height of the Cold War, the Soviets believed the key to victory was not in missiles or tanks, but hidden within the human mind. Secret laboratories sprang up across the USSR, tasked with exploring psychic powers. Soviet researchers recruited individuals they claimed could see events thousands of miles away or even predict the future. These so-called psychic spies underwent intense experiments, attempting remote viewing, mind reading, and telepathic communication. The KGB hoped they could uncover enemy secrets without leaving the country, but reality quickly set in. The psychic spies consistently failed under controlled conditions. Predictions proved inaccurate, and supposed telepathic messages never arrived clearly. Despite years of testing and massive funding, the Soviet psychic program collapsed quietly, becoming one of the Cold War's strangest and most embarrassing secrets. Experiment number 5, the Sverdlovsk anthrax leak. In 1979, a secret Soviet biological weapons lab in Sverdlovsk was conducting dangerous experiments with anthrax, one of the deadliest bacteria known to humanity. Soviet scientists were developing weaponized strains capable of mass destruction. But something went horribly wrong. A ventilation filter malfunctioned, silently releasing lethal anthrax spores into the nearby city. Within days, residents mysteriously fell ill. High fevers, violent coughing, and sudden deaths terrified the community. Soviet authorities rushed to cover it up, blaming the deaths on tainted meat from local markets. But doctors recognized the horrifying truth: an accidental biological weapons leak. Over 100 people died in agony, and hundreds more became seriously ill. The disaster was swiftly concealed from the public and the world. It wasn't until decades later, after the Soviet Union collapsed, that the terrifying reality emerged. A top-secret Soviet experiment had unleashed deadly anthrax on its own citizens. Experiment number 6. Reversing Siberian rivers. In the 1950s, Soviet engineers unveiled one of the most ambitious and reckless engineering projects in history: the plan to reverse Siberia's rivers. Stalin believed this could irrigate deserts, boost agriculture, and transform the Soviet Union's landscape forever. Gigantic canals and dams were proposed to redirect massive rivers thousands of kilometers southward. But when engineers started evaluating the environmental impact, they realized the project was dangerously flawed. Experts warned it would devastate ecosystems, dry out vast regions, and potentially create new deserts instead of farmland. Despite enormous pressure from Soviet leadership, the scientists managed to halt the project. Millions had already been spent, landscapes altered permanently, and countless hours wasted, all for a dangerous idea that thankfully never fully materialized. Experiment number 7. Flying tanks. During World War II, Soviet military planners faced a challenge: how to quickly deploy heavy tanks directly onto the battlefield. Their solution was bizarre: a tank with wings. The idea was simple, yet insane. Attach glider wings to a tank, tow it behind a plane, then release it to glide smoothly onto enemy territory. In 1942, the Soviets built the Antonov A-40, their first flying tank prototype. When test flights began, the problems quickly became obvious. The tank was far too heavy. Even powerful bomber planes struggled to tow it. In one disastrous flight, the plane nearly crashed trying to lift the tank off the runway. After a handful of frightening test flights, Soviet commanders finally scrapped the project. The flying tank never saw combat and was quietly abandoned, an absurd experiment the Soviet military would prefer to forget. Experiment number 8. Nuclear-powered airplanes. At the peak of the Cold War, the Soviet Union explored an ambitious yet terrifying concept: aircraft powered by nuclear reactors. They hoped these nuclear-powered planes could stay airborne for weeks, ready at all times for strategic bombing missions. Soviet engineers modified a Tupolev bomber into the experimental Tu-119, installing a small nuclear reactor on board. While initial ground tests seemed promising, reality soon set in. Engineers discovered the reactor released dangerous radiation, putting pilots and crew at severe risk. Shielding the reactor properly would make the plane impossibly heavy. After multiple tests exposed crews to deadly radiation levels, the Soviets quietly cancelled the program. The nuclear-powered aircraft was left behind as another failed and deadly Soviet military experiment. Experiment number 9. Soviet mind control experiments. In response to America's infamous MK-Ultra, Soviet researchers pursued their own sinister program: controlling human minds. Secret facilities across the USSR experimented with powerful psychoactive drugs, brutal electroshock treatments, and hypnotic suggestion. Their goal was clear, yet horrifying: create obedient spies who could be manipulated effortlessly. Subjects, often unwilling prisoners or psychiatric patients, underwent terrifying psychological experiments. Soviet scientists tried repeatedly to erase and implant memories or force confessions under mind-altering conditions. Yet the results were chaotic, unpredictable, and often catastrophic. Victims emerged broken, permanently traumatized, or mentally destroyed. After years of chilling failures, The Soviet mind control program collapsed, quietly buried by embarrassed officials. Experiment number 10. Armed Soviet space station. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union didn't just aim for peaceful space exploration, they secretly prepared for orbital warfare. In the 1970s, Soviet scientists launched the Almaz space station, secretly outfitted with a powerful onboard cannon. Its mission was alarming: to shoot down enemy satellites and defend Soviet interests in orbit. Incredibly, the weapon was actually test-fired in space, successfully destroying targets. But firing the cannon proved problematic. The recoil severely disrupted the station's orbit, threatening to send it spinning dangerously out of control. Faced with these risks, the Soviets quietly discontinued the armed space station project. The Almaz cannon experiments were quickly hidden from history, becoming one of the Cold War's most disturbing and least known chapters. Experiment number 11. Creating immortal soldiers. In the late 1940s, Stalin became obsessed with another chilling ambition: creating immortal soldiers. Convinced Soviet power depended on superhuman troops who wouldn't age, weaken, or tire. He funded secretive experiments involving radical hormone injections, organ transplants, and blood transfusions. Scientists promised Stalin they could reverse aging and extend lifespans dramatically. Young soldiers received experimental treatments, transfusions from younger people, and injections of mysterious chemical cocktails. Initially hopeful, these experiments quickly turned nightmarish. Soldiers suffered severe reactions, rapid organ failure, horrifying physical deformities, and mental breakdowns. Rather than immortality, the experiments brought only suffering and early death. Realizing their terrible failure, Soviet authorities abruptly terminated the project, destroying evidence and burying any trace of these attempts deep in secret archives.